Hello, everyone. Kevin, are we waiting for a couple of other participants? I'm not seeing Mayor Chop or our CAO. Hi, Councillor Columbus.
Good day, Mr. Chair. I got a new iPad Pro here and I had some trouble getting on, but I've got it all figured out.
Okay, good.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Clerk.
Okay, we're just experiencing some technical issues with the microphones, but Mayor Chop will be attending late, and I believe Councillor Van Passen is on, or coming on soon. Oh,
Okay.
He's asking me to resend the link, so he'll be on shortly.
Okay, very good. I will wait until he arrives and then we'll proceed. Kevin, while we're waiting, should I be pinning all of our staff as well?
Counselor, I would not pin the staff. That might make it hard for you. So I would just pin counselors, and then if you're missing a staff hand, I'll help you on that one. Okay.
And I also have you pin Mr. Burgess.
I prefer not to be pinned, but no problem.
I'm just following the instructions.
As a good bureaucrat, I try never to be pinned down.
I understand how you feel.
It's been so long since I saw Fritz's face, I hardly recognized him. Hi, Fritz.
Afternoon, everyone. A few little technical difficulties here.
Welcome, Councillor Van Passen. I think we are ready to proceed. Mr. Clerk, I see you're still working on batteries. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna have to shuffle through a whole bunch of batteries if you're all be dead, and the microphones. This is the only way it's gonna work today. So you're gonna have to bear with me. Apologies in advance.
Okay. We'll be here.
Things you need anything?
Chair Michelle, I think we're okay to start. I did, or are we waiting for Mayor Chop to be able to attend?
I was planning, I didn't know how late you were suggesting she might be. I'm going to propose that we begin unless she gave you other information.
I suggest we begin.
Okay, thank you very much. Then good afternoon and welcome to this council and committee meeting for April 13, 2021. I would like to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised. I would ask you to ensure that your phones are on silent mode, to keep your camera on and mute yourself when you are not speaking. And of course, please remember to unmute yourself if speaking. Please use the Microsoft Teams raise hand feature icon to be called upon to speak, and please try your best to remember to lower that icon when you are finished speaking. It's of great assistance to the chair. And just as a reminder to members of committee, if the vote outcome on any particular item is unclear, I will call upon our clerk to assist counting the votes member by member to ensure accuracy. We will not be conducting recorded votes unless there is a very specific request by a member of committee to do so. I now call the council and committee meeting to order. We'll begin with any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda or any changes to the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda by members of committee? Committee member Van Passen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll have to ask the clerk for a little bit of technical advice here, but in our information package, item number 2J, the low-speed vehicles, can we move that to communications on the agenda, or can we have it put on next week's council agenda?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Van Passen. I'll wait to see what the clerk has to say about that.
Through you, Chair Michelle, to Councillor Van Passen, you may put it on the agenda with the approval of committee, or you may also elect to have it as a part of next week's agenda without a vote.
Yeah, I think next week would be fine. We got a pretty full agenda, but I'd like to have council have a look at it, not just receive it as part of that information package. So if we'll put it on next week's council agenda, that would be fine.
Noted, thank you. I'll include that.
Thank you, Councillor Van Passen. Councillor Rabbits?
Thank you. Through you. I was hoping to have communication item 5A, our Integrity Commissioner's report, pulled for a discussion.
Okay, we will have that pulled, Mr. Clerk, for discussion. Communication item A, Integrity Commissioner report.
But also, if I may, Mr. Chair, I do see our green screen would appear to still be on, and I was just wondering if that's something we wanted to address. And Councillor Huffman does have her hand raised as well, if you're not able to see her.
I do see her. I just was first looking for her icon, and now I see her hand. And Councillor Huffman, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I was just wondering if under communications items, if we could have item 5C pulled for further discussion and 5D pulled for further discussion, please, and thank you.
Yes, Councillor Huffman, and I do believe we had some advance notice of that. I already had included those in my notes, so that will be done.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
And I'm seeing our CAO, Mr. Burgess.
Yeah, thank you to the chair, to council. Staff obtained some information from our integrity commissioner yesterday, and staff was going to recommend that the item be pulled until staff can provide full report to council on the integrity commissioner's correspondence, because it is something that council may want to discuss. If they want to discuss that, the recent correspondence, we'd have to do that in camera. But the advice from staff is to not discuss the report until the information is provided to council.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. I'm just going to go over now to Councillor Rabbits to have his response to that.
Well, if we need to receive some information before discussing the report, I would suggest we need to receive that information and do the nature of a closed session item. I don't know if we are to receive that today or if we want to have some adequate public notice and allow our staff maybe to be better prepared to deliver that correspondence to us. I'd look to the CAO.
Yeah, that was the intent. We weren't able to provide a report to council since we only received this information late yesterday afternoon. It would not make public notice. So the ask was that we just not, we defer that report until staff is able to provide council with the fulsome of the information.
Thank you, Jason. I would move that deferral.
Kevin, do we need to vote on that deferral of this change to the agenda?
Through you, Chairman Shelley, to you. What we can do is we can just receive it for information this week, and then it will be added on our staff action list to prepare a further report.
Very well. And Jason, you had something to add?
Yeah, sorry, and I apologize. Staff wasn't counting on a pull on the agenda type, so we had planned something else. So I apologize for the confusion on this one. We were just going to notify council of that, but since it got pulled, we needed to change plan. So we'll take it as advisement if council's comfortable with that, and we'll provide a report prior to next week's council meeting, a confidential report in nature.
Okay, thank you. And I'm seeing Councillor Columbus.
Yes, Mr. Chair, with changes to the agenda, are you covering off consent items with that same area? Or are you moving on with
No.
consent items later?
No, Councillor Columbus, if there is a consent item that you would like to have addressed, we can do that too.
Yes, I've got a question with respect to item 3B, building inspector report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. You'll note that. And we will, regard to the consent items, we had 3. Councillor Columbus has pulled 3B, and we will discuss that item before the remaining staff reports in item 6. Councillor Columbus, for your information. And Councillor Van Passen, I'm sorry, Councillor Columbus, did you have another one?
No, sir, I forgot to put my hand down, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to communication item 5A, it's been pulled, and I again should ask the clerk, but I think the intent was not to defer it, but to refer it back to staff for more information. There's a subtle difference in the meaning of those two words under our procedural bylaw, but I believe that was to refer it to staff to gather up that additional information and bring back the report. So would that be the sort of the correct process when we deal with that in its time?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Van Passen. I will leave that to our clerk, but it does sound like you are correct to me.
Through you, Chair Michelli, what we can do is include that as a part of the motion when we receive information for the Integrity Commissioner's report. We'll also add an additional clause that staff be referred to prepare a staff report.
Okay, very well. Thank you. And are there any other changes to the agenda? And in that event, I will ask for a mover to approve the agenda as amended. Councillor Huffman, and seconded by Councillor Columbus. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We have one deputation this afternoon, and a reminder to the deputation from Margot McGillis. Ms. McGillis, you will have a limit of 5 minutes to speak today. I will try to gently remind you when you have 1 minute remaining. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, folks. I was going to say thank you to Mayor Chop for gearing me in the right direction, but she has not arrived as yet. But anyway, thanks for the time. I am here today representing the residents on Nelson Street from Myrtle to Blue Line. Something needs to be done about the speeding. I've got 4 main points to address. I firmly believe that solar panels like the ones on Highway 6 will help with speeders. There should also be correct stop signs at Myrtle and Nelson, and again at Blue Line and Radical. Also with a crosswalk at the trailer park to allow access to those people. Number 4, there should also be signage at Highway 24 and Radical to divert the large overweight vehicles to Highway 6. They should not be coming through a residential community, which they do now all the time. Well, not now, because the road's under construction. The residents of Nelson Street feel if something is not put in place before the street is completed, the speeding will be even worse after. I appeal to you today to take care of the residents of Nelson Street. I have a letter which I delivered to 5 people with copies of the petition, which has roughly 65 signatures. The letter reads as follows: stop the speeding. If not, but when, someone is going to be killed. There is excessive speed, dangerous driving, and a high percentage of overweight transport trucks utilizing Nelson Street through to Radical Road, which is extremely dangerous for a residential neighborhood. The stretch from St. George Street to Highway 24, which measures 6 kilometers, does not have 1 stop sign and only 2 speed signs, which are ignored by the majority of drivers. There should not be large transport trucks, dump trucks, and heavy construction trucks driving through a residential area when Highway 6 is less than 1 kilometer north, which is engineered for the size and weight of those vehicles. Once again, when Nelson Street road work is completed, it is feared from all the people that live here that the speeding is going to be much, much worse. And I've attached all the signatures of our concerned neighbors, complete with suggestions on how to curtail the speeding and road dangers. Once again, there's suggestions other than the ones that I have mentioned earlier. Speed bumps are a suggestion. Lower the speed to 40 kilometers. A three-way stop at Nelson and Myrtle, and also a three-way stop at Blue Line and Radical. A designated crosswalk and flashing lights for pedestrians crossing the street at the trailer park to the new sidewalk, which is north side. And once again, signage to divert heavy trucks to Highway 6. Now, I had copies of the petition with the 65 signatures, and this letter delivered to 5 different people. Anyway, I hope that something can be done, and as once again, I hope you can do something before the construction is complete. I think that's getting close to 5, I think.
We have 1 minute remaining now, Margot.
Okay. Well, once again, I don't know if another meeting is going to be held to discuss these issues or how it goes further now. Like, this is all new to me. Anyway, that's about it, folks.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Gillis. Are there any questions for the deputation from council? I see Councillor Columbus.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Ms. McGillis, it sounds like in so many other areas, we've got the same issue. Just wonder if it's an enforcement issue at this point. Wonder if you've contacted the OPP and had any feedback from them with respect to enforcement of speeding.
Yes, I have. I have gone. One of the copies of the petition and the letter I dropped off and hand delivered it to Joe Varga. I have gone to the police shop many, many times since I've lived here. It'll be 10 years. I have gone there many times just to say you have to enforce these issues. The last time I was there, the police officer said, "Is it you again?" So I don't know. They occasionally you do see traffic out here trying to find the speeders, but they're parked where everyone can see them. And I drove by one day and I said, "Why are you parked there?" And he said, "Because you're the one that's always saying there's speeders." There's no speeders. I said, "Yes, there are. Everyone can see you there, so they're going to slow down. Park where you can't be seen." So yeah, enforcement would definitely help. And one of the residents that would not sign the petition, he said to me there should be more enforcement by the OPP. So
Thank you for your answer.
Okay, thank you. Now what? Yes.
Chair? Councillor Van Patten, I think we may have lost our chair. Deputy Mayor Van.
I think you're correct, Councillor Martin. I'm not seeing Chair Thomas Shelley currently. Let's give it a moment. I think he's trying to reconnect.
Looks like
Thank
a little
you.
frustration on
Sorry
the
about
screen
that.
there. So.
I got disconnected there, but I am back with you, and I'm sorry. I believe we are waiting for Councillor Martin to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair Michelle. Thank you, Ms. McGillis, for your deputation. I wondered if you had participated in any of the public meetings that occurred for the construction in your area on Nelson Road when they had the engineering group come and provide information to the public on what types of work would be done.
Yes, we did attend. My husband and I attended the one meeting prior to the construction starting, and we voiced these issues then, but nothing seemed to come of it.
Okay, and then I just wanted to provide a further comment. You had mentioned earlier you didn't know what the next steps would be. Technically, council would be able to discuss some of this with staff going forward, but the engineering work on the repairs out your direction, that's already completed. So I even myself don't know what staff would be able to commit to making changes to that project at this point in time. But I'm happy to ask a few questions of staff when council members are finished chatting with you today.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I don't think it's too difficult to install the solar panels, and I don't think it's too difficult to install stop signs, I mean.
And that's, thank you for bringing that up. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. McGillis, I believe that the county doesn't directly select the locations of those solar powered signs, and maybe Councillor Columbus or Councillor Huffman can correct me if I'm wrong, because they're on the police service board. But I think it's a collaborative discussion between our road staff and the police service board and a few others as to where the placement of those signs go. But maybe I could pass that on to my colleagues who know.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just as a follow-up, I believe recently we implemented a new policy on how to change the speed limits. We implemented this policy for stop signs. So just by passing this off to our staff, it'll be on the list of the options they're going to look at in the coming year. And I think the same is for the Police Services Board, that a joint committee with the police and our roads department on selecting sites for the warning signs. So as long as we receive this as information and forward it all on to staff, then they should be looking into it over the course of the next little while. So.
Appreciate it big time, because there's also a resident down the way. When I was doing the petition over a period of 3 days of walking, he's a retired OPP officer, and apparently he knows Joe Varga very well, and he was the one that suggested to me, he said, Margot, when you're doing the petition and the letter, also drop a copies off to Joe Varga, because he said when he sees something like this, he should be able to sort of get things moving along a little bit quicker as well. But I have not heard back from Joe Varga.
And Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle, Chair Michelle. I just wanted to say that what I'll do is I'll ensure that this is a discussion that occurs with the Police Services Board. And you probably haven't heard back from Inspector Varga, because he had been seconded to another position at this point in time. So I believe he is back in our realm. So we will discuss it at Police Services, and as Councillor Van Passen said, all of the information will go forward to staff, and hopefully we should be able to come up with some type of solution to this ongoing issue that your neighborhood is experiencing.
Fantastic. I really appreciate it. That would be wonderful.
Thanks, Margot.
I think the whole street will go out and party when they see the speeders diminished. We'll be able to have a street party without any speeders.
Yes, Ms. McGillis, just to mention, please, and socially distanced, I hope.
Oh, yes, big time.
Councillor Columbus.
By then, this will be behind us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if Mr. Godby's on or Jim Milson, but the questions that Ms. McGillis has raised should be directed to the Public Works Department and also the Bylaw Department, because that's where they should go. Perhaps Mr. Burgess can comment on that, or whoever's taking notes, to move it in that direction so we can address some of these issues along with the Police Service Board comments.
Mr. Godby, he got a copy of the petition and a copy of the letter. I dropped it off at the Robinson Street office, and they said that they would forward it to him, along with Adam, what's his name? Adam Cave, the project manager. He also got copies of all this.
Are there any other questions of committee? In that case, then, may I have a motion to receive the deputation as information? Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McGillis.
Thank you.
Moving on to communications, as I think committee can see, we have 4 communication items today.
Chair Michelle?
I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk.
Could we address the remaining 2 consent items prior to the communications?
Yes, I'm so sorry. My apologies for that. And I would need a motion to approve the remaining consent items as presented in our agenda. Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Huffman. All those in favor? Thank you very much. That is carried. And now moving on to communications, we have had the discussion of which of those items we will be speaking to. Mr. Clerk, do we need to go through the process of addressing communication item A, the Integrity Commissioner's Annual Report?
Through you, Chair Michelle, what we can do is I have a motion drafted, and that receives it as information and refers the Integrity Commissioner report to staff to prepare a report for next week, April 20th council meeting. If we could get a mover and seconder for that, we can move on to the next item after the Integrity Commissioner report.
Okay, before we do that, I believe Committee Member Van Passen has a question. Correct?
Not a question, Mr. Chairman, but make the motion to refer it back to staff, and I do believe that's not sort of debatable. So.
Okay, so Mr. Clerk, is that all we need is the motion to do that?
That's correct. Apologies with my flashing mic. I'm receiving some emails, but that's the best I can do with these low batteries. So the motion, as I have prepared and for committee consideration, reads that the 2020 Annual Integrity Commissioner report from John Mascarin, Integrity Commissioner, be received as information, and that the Annual Integrity Commissioner report be referred to staff to prepare a report for April 20th council meeting.
And do I have a mover? It's Councillor Taylor and Councillor Van Passen to second. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the next communication, item B. Is there a member of committee who would like to speak to consent item B from Mr. Peter Black regarding the Superior Court of Justice ruling? Seeing none, then, may I have a motion to receive Peter Black's communication as information or alternatives? That's being moved by Councillor Huffman and seconder.
Chair Michelle, I believe Councillor Huffman wanted to speak to it. Is that correct?
I am sorry, my apologies. Councillor Huffman, yes, your hand came up after I had finished that. Okay, so yes, Councillor Huffman, you may proceed if you would wish to speak to that item.
Okay, thank you, Chair Michelle. Yeah, I guess my question is, receiving this correspondence, what is the next step in terms of us coming up with how this is going to be enforced in regards to the ruling in this court case? I guess my question is, how do we move forward with this information now that we have it? We all received the information regarding the outcome of the case, but there hasn't been any discussion about it. And it certainly was a hot item in Norfolk County. And I know that it was, a hot button item for the election as well. So I'm just curious as to how we move forward. So Mr. Black brings up some good questions. Where do we go from here? If someone could assist me, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Huffman. I think we'll have to go to our CAO for that one.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. As council knows, this was a long process. I think it lasted a few councils. In fact, part of the court case relied upon information from a previous mayor that the resident relied upon. We obviously were made aware of it. We were part of the. We were there as monitors to the case. Mr. Milson and Paula have both been made aware of the case, and we'll look to take a reasonable approach to enforcement this year as we transition out to the new ruling. So there will be bylaws made aware of it, and we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it over the summer and into next year.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burgess. And Councillor Huffman, is that satisfactory for now? Thank you. Then may I have a motion to receive Peter Black's communication as information or have any alternatives presented? Moved by Councillor Columbus, seconded by Councillor Rabbits. All those in, and I'm sorry, Councillor Columbus, you are the, as information?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All those in favor? Thank you, that is carried. And moving on to the remaining two communication items. Committee Member Huffman, you have previously requested that the following two communications, item C and item D, be included on the agenda. Would you like to speak to the communication item C from Old Cut Boat Livery regarding bylaw 2021-6, or sorry, -29?
Oh, geez, just put it there. Yes, I would. Thank you very much. I think the correspondence that we received from Mr. Ferris is very self-explanatory. I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. I know that we made a decision in council regarding the bylaw in terms of the motorized, the personal watercraft rental businesses. What I'm looking at is I think that there were some unintended consequences of that bylaw being passed, and that we've got a niche here where we can look at watercraft that are below 25 horsepower in terms of looking at boat rentals. What we've done now is we've priced in terms of the bylaw, a family who has over 90 years experience or 90 years of providing this service to the community, who have now been outpriced of providing this service. And I think this is certainly a consequence of maybe us being a little bit overzealous with our bylaw, and was just wondering, looking to my colleagues, if we have an appetite to make an amendment to that bylaw so that we can make sure that these local businesses stay in business in Norfolk County, and that we are truly open for business. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huffman. I believe our clerk has a comment.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Michele, to Committee Member Huffman, I did, when that matter came onto the agenda, I did a quick review, and I think there is a little bit of discrepancy in the definitions of the Schedule 12 of the personal watercraft rentals. So I'd just like to provide some clarity on that. So right now, what change the batteries. Okay, so right now what we do is we license on a per watercraft basis. The low horsepower motorized pleasure vessel is not a part of the watercraft, which would be considering vehicles with So I'm not having a fun time with the microphones today. So it might cut out on me again. I'm just gonna have to recycle these things through and through, sorry. But the watercraft does not, watercraft licensing on a per boat basis does not include low horsepower motorized pleasure vessels, which would be, I've read it and I'm in my consideration, that would include fishing boat rentals. And if it has a hull, then it would be considered a low horsepower motorized pleasure vessel and not need an individual license for that, just an overall business license. So that would be a $180 fee per year basis and not an additional $180 fee per boat moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. So to clarify then, there was a misunderstanding in terms of the overreach of it, and it's per marina, $180 for licensing for whatever number of boats that they have available for rental. Is that correct?
That would be correct, yes. So watercraft, okay. The umbrella watercraft term would be personalized motorized watercraft, or for another, like the Sea-Doos, motorized pleasure vessels, and personal non-motorized watercraft.
Okay, so we can consider this issue dealt with. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your diligence in getting that answer for me.
And Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the same sort of discussion came up with kayaks and canoes, and it was just a matter of, maybe we didn't do quite a good enough job with our wording in the bylaw, but that's what bylaws are, is lawyers like them, but nobody else does. But I think our deputy clerk has sort of clarified it, and, maybe we could, look at the bylaw and try to spell it out in language that I would understand rather than clerkese, and sort of clarify what we mean by watercraft and low horsepower vehicles and pleasure vessels, and maybe we can do a little better job with the definitions. So.
And Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Councillor Michelli. Through you to Kevin, additional clarification. There's some language in that bylaw concerning insurance and listing the county on the insurance and so forth. So is that also not included in the horsepower that we're discussing from the letter from Mr. Ferris?
Through you, Chair Michelli, to Committee Member Martin, my understanding is that portion is still included and required for liability purposes. It's not necessarily a double insurance. It's just the county is included on your insurance for your business to make sure that we're not held liable. So if an accident happens, we won't be included in the lawsuit.
I think that through you, Mr. Chair, there's a bit of clarifying that could happen on the staff level with that as well. My intention today, I was hoping that we would actually be able to give time for Teresa to get rolling in the county and familiarize herself with things, but put some fresh eyes on this bylaw as well, because I think that there are some contradictions from what we expected was happening and what especially these business owners had specifically dialogued with former clerk Andy Grizel on this, and maybe even put it back on the agenda and allow them to come for a deputation and walk us through some of the specifics. I'm just not entirely convinced that this is going to solve the issue for them. So I'll just throw that out there. Unless Mr. Burgess knows something else, it's okay if you don't. There was one email thread where I had chatted with Ms. Darlington about risk management aspects, but I don't want to put staff on the spot. If they don't have answers today, that is okay, but I think that there's probably a little bit more review that could go on here.
Okay, I'm seeing, yes, Mr. Burgess.
I think if council does not believe that the issues are being fully addressed, my recommendation would be for the issues from the industry to be articulated, whether that's through a deputation or through another letter, and then staff can then respond in writing to both the industry and to council to make sure that there is a satisfactory response. And I think that would, and if there's not a satisfactory response, we can then, work on that solution. So we can certainly, council can certainly ask the industry to provide those written notice, or we can reach out to the industry participants.
Thank you, Jason. And just before I go to Councillor Columbus, I do see Shelley Darlington has her hand up.
Thank you, Chair Michelle, for the opportunity to follow up. Yes, thank you, Councillor Martin. We did have a meeting scheduled that was subsequently canceled as Ms. Budas provided some comments, but I think the suggestion that you have provided that some additional discussion with the clerk's office might be prudent along with risk management team.
Thank you, Shelley. Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ferris's request makes a lot of sense. I think we all agree. Has he been informed that he's okay, that he does not have to license all 6 of his 12-foot or 14-foot boats through Mr. Melson's office?
Kevin, go ahead.
I guess that comes under your department.
Through you, Chair Michelle, to Councillor Columbus, we will prepare communications and inform them of the amended requirements and clear things up for them.
Great.
And Councillor Columbus, just if I can just step out of my role as chair for one moment for some information. I have been in touch with Mr. Milson in the bylaw department and made him aware of the possible adjustments we could be making to this bylaw, and he has totally complied with the request to basically hold off on any major enforcement of this until it gets sorted out.
Great, thanks.
And Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair Michelle. Through you to Mr. Burgess, Ms. Darlington, would 1 month CIC be enough time if we alerted, or the following, next CIC, enough time if we alerted Mr. Ferris to provide a deputation or some more specific bullet points for you?
I would suggest 2 cycles, only because the issue with these bylaws is that they affect multiple business owners. So like any bylaw, we want to make sure that we canvass appropriately. So I would make the suggestion for 2 cycles. And then that doesn't mean that, that means that we can certainly reach out to Mr. Ferris to inform him of the interim rulings. And then if we're dealing with the bylaw changes, then we can provide some recommendations of council on 2 cycles.
Thank you.
Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair Michelle. I think Jason kind of covered what I was going to discuss, because I'm looking like we're now April 13th and people are starting to, their marinas are able to be open and people are going to be starting to rent boats and things like that. So as long as we reach out to them, get this clarified in the short term, and then we delve into it a little bit deeper in 2 cycles, that sounds good to me.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion or question about communication item C? In that case, then, may I have a motion to receive the communications regarding bylaw 2021-29 as information? Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And Committee Member Huffman, you would also like to speak to our next communication, item D, from Debbie France regarding the Health Canada consultation.
Yes, thank you, Chair Michelle. I guess I just had the urge to just talk a lot today. My question, I guess, because as you know, I've kind of taken this on a little bit in terms of making sure that we're covering all of our bases and dotting our I's and crossing our T's when it comes to the illegal cannabis operations in Norfolk County. And this has come forward. there's a deadline of May 7th, 21 for feedback in terms of the Health Canada consultation. I was just wondering if Mr. Burgess would be able to let us know if our staff are engaged in that, if we have someone going forward to participate in this consultation that's open for comment, and if not, if we can see about getting something going. Thank you.
Yeah, I referred the matter to Heidi Van Dyke from Health and Social Services.
Okay, thank you. Is that something that Heidi has the time for at this point in time, or that seems a little?
That is the challenge with this issue. It's unfortunate. There is some, and just to be clear, there's also some activity going on in the Western Wardens Caucus, which we are also participants of. So to be frank with council, yes, if there's anything that from that team that needs to come up, we will, we will certainly put it forward, and we're working with. I'm looking at what Western Wardens Caucus is also putting forward. Because of our demands, I might just allow Western Wardens Caucus to, to represent our points and not move that much forward with it.
Okay, all right. So, but there would be some representation. It just necessarily wouldn't be directly from Norfolk County Council. Norfolk
That's
County.
correct. And if there's something that our staff is particularly zoned in on, we can provide some information, and then they can expand on it as they make their representations.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong, isn't Ms. Givens involved in some level in terms of offering? Doesn't she sit on a board or something like that in regards of the cannabis operation?
I'm not sure on that, and I will. Brandon Sloan's there, so I will.
Okay.
Yeah, through the chair, just to supplement, Ms. Givens is connected with some of the groups and has done some presentations, a little bit more on the planning side of things in terms of connecting on the planning aspects, but overall, there is going to be some review of some of the planning and the bylaw implications about the cannabis topic this year as part of the work program as well, just to put that out there as a reminder.
Okay, thank you very much, Brandon. I knew she was involved, and I didn't know if it was on this level or not. I just wanted to make sure if we already had something in the works that we not double back. But okay, thank you very much.
And is there any other discussion about communication item D? Thank you. Seeing none, may I have a motion to receive the communications regarding the Health Canada consultation as information? Councillor Huffman, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We will move on to staff reports. Councillor Columbus has asked for a discussion of consent item 3B. We will begin with that when he is ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I had a question of Mr. Burgess, I guess, and it was the report talks about having 9 full-time building inspectors, and the one position is currently 0.83, and we're looking at making that a 1 full-time position. Are all those 9 inspectors, Mr. Burgess, on the job at this time, or are some off for any reason, or can you share that information with us?
Through the chair to the councillor, I know that there was one off currently, and I believe the other vacancy has been filled, but there is one off currently. But I'll have Mr. Sloan or Mr. Or Fritz, our CBO, comment. But I'll turn that to Mr. Sloan.
Sure, and thanks through the chair, and to supplement Jason, and Fritz can jump in as well. Of the inspector positions, just a reminder that some are doing plans review and some are out there doing the inspections. That's just the overall category for that position. So usually there's a split. There's this position, and then there's now another vacancy. So we're down 2, plus we have some availability issues when others are ill or on training. this is definitely a recruitment issue as well that would help with having this as a full FTE, along with our volume issues, of course, and timing of getting some needed housing development happening.
So hopefully, Mr. Sloan, we'll have 9 full-time people in that position. I know I spoke to you a while back and you said that applications are way up and our staff complement was kind of down. So there's a big gap in percentage to actually fill.
Yeah, through the chair, you're correct. And actually a few months ago, I know Fritz and Mark were having some challenges because we were down 3 at one point in time. We're back to, I think, down 2. But we are definitely experiencing a lot of pressures. And I know also Fritz has been discussing with me about how to get this complement up and if there's any even temporary supplements we need to do to get some of these developments happening as well. So there may be some other short-term measures that we're exploring, and that'll help us with some of our customer service matters as well, giving us a bit of economic boost with some more timely development. I know the industry has been chatting with us a lot about making sure we've got full inspectors, so this is part of our plan.
Understood. Thanks very much.
Yeah, just to be clear with council, staff are having a difficult time filling anything that is not a full-time position. We're not at, and that's just not for building inspectors, it's across the organization. We're not a easily commutable community, and therefore people are not really interested in a position unless it's a permanent full-time position, and there's a subsequent report in camera that issue is also rearing its head there. So to try to fill a 0.8, it's just not, the 0.8 was created because of a unique set of circumstances for the employee. It was customized to attract somebody, and that person is retired now, and it really doesn't make sense to try to do a 0.8. It was done originally not from a workload issue, but to essentially attract that individual to come here or to continue on with the job. So it's just not, we're just not having ability to fill those positions when we go into market.
Is there anything else from committee? Thank you. And Mr. Clerk, do I need a motion to receive that as information, or is it not necessary because it was a consent item?
Through you, Chair Michele, we would need to move or provide an alternative to the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Then do I have a mover of the staff recommendation or an alternative? Councillor Columbus, seconded by Councillor Van Passen. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And moving on to staff report 6A, staff report EIS 21-08 regarding the Turkey Point drainage projects. Before I go to Mr. Godby, I see Councillor Van Passen has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report deals with stuff going all the way back to 2002, and it's rather complex. There's some information I think even our staff want to double check on, and if it would be possible, I would like to just defer this to the next CNC meeting. And yeah, if it's been 20 years since they started that, I don't think another 4 weeks are going to hurt anything. And it would probably, because it was just, you know, thrown at us on Friday, we might get a little bit more time to get some feedback from the people down there as well over the course of next month. And I'm not sure Mr. Godby is with us today. Is he?
That's correct. Mr. Godby's not present today.
Yeah. So just in the essence of time, could I just move that this be deferred to the next cycle, please?
Okay, we have, and Councillor Martin, you're seconding that? Then all those in favor of the deferral? And that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to staff report EIS 21-18 regarding the James Street reconstruction. And I understand again that Jason, Mr. Godby is scheduled to present this report. I am assuming he has a replacement.
That's correct. I'll start, and Mr. King is here, who is far more knowledgeable than me on both engineering topics and this project specifically. But this report refers to a budget adjustment of $743,000. Staff did review to see if there were any other projects that we could delay or defer to offset this budget variance. The positive item is that all our projects are out, either have been tendered or out to tender, so there was no real projects to look to defer or delay. So that's positive on getting things done, negative on looking for other sources to offset this budget variance. And, you know, it is a significant budget variance. It's almost 26% of the budget. But what I wanted to stress was this was an older project. Our team, when they came in, they recognized that there was a budgetary issue, you know, with this project. The budget was artificially set far too low for the complexity of the budget and of the project and the size of the project. However, we were successful in getting $1.3 million worth of connecting link funding. So we want to make sure that we use that. We recognize the fact that we didn't, you know, we didn't budget this project correctly, but the new team in place, you know, recognized that very early. We just couldn't go back and adjust it because we had already filed and received money with the from the federal government. So the project variance before you, like I said, is significant. And to be very clear and transparent, this is a project variance on this portion of the project, and then there's more of the project that, because we've broken down in phases, there will be more to the project. That being said, staff are recommending to move forward with it. The infrastructure needs to be completed. We're not going to avoid not doing this work. And by moving forward with a budget adjustment now, we can be more efficient with the construction, and we can also avoid inflationary pressures on construction costs. Construction costs are going up greater than the rate of inflation. So we have the tender now, and we say staff's recommendation is to move forward with it. There are some other projects out there where we're having positive variances, so the tenders are coming back lower. You know, that doesn't take away from this this negative variance, but we will be able to offset some of those this negative variance with some of the positive variances we're experiencing currently, including some of the repaving projects that we have out there. So that is the overview of the report and the request. It is a budget variance for $743,000. If you have technical questions on it, I will pass that off to Mr. King, like I said, who's far more knowledgeable than I am.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know all of you have been through Delhi, and you know the James Street. It's a very busy road. This project encompasses 0.6 of a kilometer, and there still is another almost a kilometer to go yet to south of this to restore that also in the future. So it is under significant deterioration, and getting a lot of complaints about it. It's an extremely busy 4-lane thoroughfare, a lot of heavy trucks on it. As a matter of fact, one time they monitored this road for traffic, and there's 10 to 13,000 vehicles a day go through that 4-lane highway, both ways, of course. So it's heavily used. The residents there are anxiously been awaiting this project for the last 2 years, since 2019, since it first was spoken of. And the other thing that's interesting is that the James Street, Church Street intersection was supposed to be reconstructed, also with the traffic signal lights. That has been pulled away from this particular project. And the CN Rail crossing is in there for $16,000, which is badly needed for restoration, because the truckers have lost loads on that. It's so rough. The county's been trying to fix it up here and there with patching. but it has created problems. And we've got the $1.3 million from the federal government, I guess it is. And like the CEO mentioned, there's money's been saved on the Nelson Street project in Port Dover, and also some money's saved on the asphalt paving contract. So when this comes up, I would recommend and support option 2 and make that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Van Pasten.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councillor Columbus. I think we owe it to the people of Delhi for the aggravation they've put up for the last 2 years getting the rest of this, the other portion of this road done. But I just want to, maybe staff could clarify that they are going to fix it all the way to the rail line. Like it says in the one that it goes from Church Street to Argyle, but they're going to do the last couple hundred feet and redo where the rail bed used to be.
I'll have Mr. King comment on that.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Van Pasten. Yes, we are planning on restoring the old CN railway crossing there, although it's outside of the actual project limits. That was part of the actual package for the tender, and that will be completed this year.
Okay, thank you. Then I'd be happy to second the motion made by Councillor Columbus to accept the staff recommendation.
We have a mover and a seconder. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Councillor Van Pasten, you still have your hand raised. Is that? Thank you. Then we will put the motion to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Our next staff report is HSS 21-03 regarding the Dell Gold Villa, the transfer of assets. And I believe we have Heidi Van Dyke presenting this report. Heidi, are you with us?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, through you to members of committee. The purpose of this report is to give service manager consent for the transfer of assets, or essentially the amalgamation of Dell Gold Villa with the Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation. Dell Gold Villa is a seniors apartment building in Delhi that is a mix of rent geared to income housing units and market rent units. It is a building that has been property managed by the Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation since 2014. And Dell Gold Villa and the Housing Corporation also share a board of directors, except for one member. Although this is the first of the first request of this type in our service manager area, this is not uncommon as social housing providers reach the end of their mortgage. We see this type of request. We have seen this type of request in other communities where smaller providers wish to amalgamate with larger providers in order to improve their sustainability and be able to benefit from the economies of scale that come with being part of a larger organization. This support, so this request has come from the Dell Gold Villa Board of Directors. It has been supported by the Board of Directors of the Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation, and now under the Housing Services Act, needs to come before Norfolk County Council as the Consolidated Municipal Services Manager for social housing. According to the Housing Services Act, in order to give service manager consent, the housing provider needs to demonstrate that through the transfer of assets process, that the social housing units will be maintained as social housing, that there is a communication plan in place for the tenants, and that the tenants will not be adversely impacted. Through an assessment of the communication that I have received from the Board of Directors of Dell Gold Villa, these requirements have been met, And so I am comfortable recommending to council that the service manager consent be given. Once that consent is given, then I will communicate that to the two boards and to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing as required under the Act. And then the two housing providers will need to, using their own independent legal counsel, fulfill the requirements under the applicable not-for-profit corporations legislation to make that transfer of assets happen. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of committee? Councillor Rabbits.
Thank you, and through you to Heidi. Heidi, thank you for this report. I've been looking forward to this date for some time now. When I first joined as the council representative on the Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation, I was curious as to why we had one board of directors and two different operations at play. So for my colleagues, this may be brand new, but for me, this has been a topic of discussion since I joined the Housing Corporation. And I was hoping that you might be able to provide us with a little bit of information about end of operating agreements, if I've got that terminology correct, because that was my first introduction to potentially amalgamating these two services into one board. And maybe that might provide some additional context for the members present and the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Rabbit. When social housing buildings were constructed, they were constructed with funding from either the federal and or the provincial governments. And their operating agreements are tied to the term of their mortgage. So their obligations to deliver social housing are part of that agreement. And so when the mortgage is paid off, those agreements expire. That is significant because in other communities at the end of operating, some social housing providers have chosen to exit the social housing program and either sell their properties or turn into market rent or something else. And that's concerning when that happens because that's a loss of affordable housing to the community. And as well as the Consolidated Services Manager, Norfolk County is responsible for maintaining service level standards as articulated in the Housing Services Act. So as a proactive approach, in 2013, Del Gold Villa, first of all, has always been a very well-run housing provider. For prior to 2014, when they were property managed by the Housing Corporation, they were managed by a volunteer board of directors who fulfilled both the governance and the operation roles. So volunteers helped with unit turnover, move-ins, lease agreements, all of that sort of thing. And that work just became too much for a volunteer board. Additionally, their federal, I don't want to get too technical because it's the funding of social housing is a pretty technical thing, but in the federal funding formula, and the report speaks to this, the operating subsidy is only based on the mortgage payment. It doesn't take operational expenses like insurance, like hydro, gas into account. And so housing providers such as Del Gold Villa were finding themselves that in positions where they didn't have enough of an operating subsidy in order to meet the increased operating as social housing. And that is why in 2013, through a new budget amendment, Norfolk County proactively entered into a new agreement with Del Gold Villa to switch them over to the provincial funding formula, which takes those operating expenses into account, It provides a more sustainable level of operating funding to the housing provider, and in exchange for that, they agreed to stay on as a social housing provider for 10 years past the end of their mortgage. And so that agreement will transfer over between the service manager and the housing corporation, and we have proactively secured those units until the year 2030. Otherwise, they could have exited the program this past September 2020 when the mortgage was paid off and the operating agreement expired.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add, Heidi nailed it. And this particular building is a quality building with quality tenants. There's seniors tenants primarily, and it's great to have this quality asset added to our shareholder inventory of housing. And it's a place that as soon as the unit comes up, everybody wants to move there because it does have its own culture. Thanks.
Are there any other questions of staff regarding this report? Seeing none, is there a mover of the staff recommendation or an alternative? Councillor Rabbitt's the staff recommendation, Councillor Taylor seconding. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Our next staff report is CD 21-28 regarding patio encroachments. And I believe we have Zvi Lifshitz on to present this report. Zvi, are you with us? And Councillor Columbus, you still have your hand raised?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, through the chair, I believe Zvi should be on shortly. I think that with the latest warm weather recently, we're all dreaming of patios again once we have it's appropriate from a public health standpoint. So Zvi's going to take us through some brief introduction to this report. Take it away, Zvi.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'll provide a brief intro into the purpose of this report. The report before you today effectively aims to provide support to the local restaurant industry by making it easier and less cost-effective for those establishments to set up patios during the COVID-19 pandemic. So specifically, the report recommends that the county extend several of the measures that were put in place already in 2020, and also in addition to that, recommends one additional new measure. The rationale behind bringing this report forward is because of the work of the Economic Development Department, as well as the Economic Recovery Task Force and the BIA. We have identified that these patios are an important contributor to the financial sustainability of many of these restaurant establishments during the pandemic. There's some other reasons as well, but the financial sustainability is clearly the biggest part. With the continuing uncertainties surrounding the pandemic and the things that are going on, and the fact that patios have had such an important role, staff are recommending these measures in the report. So 3 of the measures, as I mentioned, started in 2020, in mid-2020, and we're looking for 3 of those to be extended. The first one is for patios that are in non-BIA areas. So these are patios which cannot get support from a BIA in the form of a letter. Typically, those patios require a 1-month public notice process. We are asking that 1-month public notice process be suspended as it was in 2020, again for 2021. The second one of those is the actual those patios that get approved without the public notice. We are requesting that they again be provided with the opportunity to have their patios approved for a 2-year period, which puts them more in line with their peers in the BIAs that do have multi-year patio approvals. And the third piece is the land lease fee. This is the price per square meter that patios will typically pay for the encroachment, and it is intended to be a market value type of payment for, again, the encroached land. Last year, that amount was reduced by council in recognition of the fact that patio utilization rates would not be what they were before. They would be lower because of the social distancing rules. And so council felt that therefore the value of that land should also be lowered. And it was put at 6 cents per square meter. And so we are asking that that 6 cents be held again for 2021. So those are the 3 extensions of approvals that happened already in 2020. The additional measure that we would like to ask is for the fees that are incurred, whether it's the fixed application fee or this per square meter per day fee, we're asking that those fees be offset for restaurants through the funds that are available in the economic recovery plan. And again, the economic recovery plan had specifically identified patios as a key priority, so we are comfortable making that recommendation. I should mention that right now, obviously, patios are closed. We're in a provincial shutdown. However, we believe that this is actually an excellent time to prepare our procedures, to get the processes right, and to get all of this straightened out now so that if hopefully later in the spring or the summer patios are allowed back, we'll be able to come out, with a bang and really get these things done properly, quickly, and in a highly supportive way. We believe that these measures, along with what our partners are doing through the Board of Trade, the BIAs, the Chambers of Commerce, all of us working together, and we believe that these supportive measures will make a real difference with restaurants in Norfolk County, which have disproportionately been impacted by the COVID-19. So that's the rationale, and I think you'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Zavid. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I know over the last couple months here as sitting on the BIA, we've worked very closely with Zvi and Chris, and very happy with that experience so far. And I just want to make sure everyone received the letter that was sent out by the BIA this morning. I believe 9:30 is when I received it, but I don't see everyone else tagged in the letter. But the BIA is very much so in support of everything is how it's written, and they are requesting everyone's support in this endeavor. So when the time comes, if no one has any questions after me, I'm happy to move it, but by all means, let's fire away with some questions if we got them.
Any questions further from committee? I do not see any. Councillor Taylor, so you have moved. Do I have a second? Councillor Rabbits, thank you. And all those in favor? And that is carried. And that includes our staff reports and discussion items. We have no motions today that I'm aware of. And so we will go to notices of motion. Councillor Martin, do you wish to introduce the motion regarding the amendment to the procedural bylaw? And I do believe, check this with the clerk, I do believe the numbering of that bylaw should be section 14.09. And do you wish to introduce that motion that will be presented at next week's council meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's pretty straightforward. I reviewed the procedural bylaw, and I just wanted to provide clarification language that ensured when you introduce a motion, and if it's defeated or otherwise, that's appropriate. But if we're introducing a motion, does that count as speaking to it? Or would it be when the motion is then seconded, you are then permitted to speak to it twice while in debate? So that is just cleaning up the language of the permission to speak to a motion when it's on the floor. Thank you.
And is there any question or discussion by members of committee? Thank you, Councillor Martin. If there is none, we will move to general announcements. And I will ask if anyone has any general announcements to make today? Mr. Burgess.
Sorry, I guess maybe I was the quickest one on the draw. I just wanted to, because we're all in our own homes and that kind of stuff for this council meeting. One cannot see the fact that Teresa Olson has her first day was on Monday. This is her first in-person council meeting. She's actually in the chambers, but she's off camera. And just wanted to recognize that she's in place now. She will officially be a clerk once we provide a bylaw. That will be coming to council next week, so that's her first job. And unfortunately, as a clerk, she's doing a walk-on report, which is usually what clerk us about. So I figured we'd set this up so that way we can always hold that against her going forward, that her first report was a walk-on. But anyways, I think it'll be a great help for the clerks team, and I'm sure council will enjoy working with her going into the future.
Thank you very much, Jason. And that was going to be one of my general announcements, so thank you. And I know we all want to welcome Teresa to our team, and I think I can speak for all of council that we will look forward to meeting her in person and working very closely with her. Any other general announcements? Okay, don't see anyone else. I have one additional announcement. I'm hoping that I can ask our representative from Public Works, Mr. King, could you give us a very brief update on the status of the construction of the Causeway Bridge, which will begin this week? I believe on Thursday is the official date. And also, if you would mind, if you're able to give us some kind of confirmation about the permitting for that project.
Through the chair, to the chair. Thank you for that, Councilor Michele. I knew that you might be asking that in the end. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Can relate some good news, really. We're able to secure our permit from navigable waterways. So we have that now actually right now in place. And the emergency permit from oceans, we have that applied for that as well too. And we hope to have that signed by next week. And like you mentioned, we are scheduled to start construction starting next Monday. So we're moving ahead with everything. All of our permitting is in place or will happen within a week or so. So that's positive news. And hopefully we're on schedule to get the structure replaced by the end of the year.
Thank you very much, Mike. I know that many people in Long Point and in the Port Road have been anxiously and patiently waiting for this project to begin. So thank you very much for that update. I know they will appreciate it. And we will now be moving on to our closed session. We have 5 in-camera reports that were provided to council. Before we go to that, I see Committee Member Van Passen has his hand up.
I wonder if we could get a 10-minute break, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that would be fine. I was going to do that at another point in time, but I think this is as good a time as any. So let's say that we will take a 10-minute break or approximately 10 minutes and reconvene at 4:40.
And will we be on the same link app for the closed session, or?
I'll have Mr. Clerk explain.
Through you, Chair Michele, would it be of benefit to pass a motion to enter into closed session first before the break, and then from there I can send out a link during the break for closed session?
That sounds very good to me, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay, so I will read off the motion and then pass back to you for a mover and a seconder. So that council in committee enter closed session at 4:20 4:29 p.m. to address the following matters: Staff Report CS 2111, proposed property sale. Staff Report CS 2115, proposed property sale. Staff Report CAO 21-23, UFCW bargaining mandate. Staff Report CAO 21-24, update on call for submissions. Staff Report CAO 21-25, Human Resource Management Strategy, Financial Management and Planning, pursuant to Section 239, 2B, C, D, I, and K of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended. I got a page break. Hold on. As amended, as the subject matter pertains to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, labor relations or employee negotiations, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization, and a position, plan, procedure, or criteria or instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board.
Very good, Kevin. I think you beat the battery there. Very nice. Do I have a mover? Councillor Taylor and Councillor Rabbit, all those in favor? And that is carried. We will reconvene. I will make a slight adjustment. We'll reconvene at 4:45. Thank you.
Okay, we will begin. Mics are live, and we will begin with a motion to reconvene an open session.
It's moved by Councillor Martin and seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you.
That was carried at 6:06 p.m. Moving forward to the first closed session report, we will vote in open. And the staff recommendation is as follows. That staff report CS 21-11, proposed property sale, be received as information. And that council declares the lands as illustrated in Schedule A being a portion of the property at 144 Western Ave, Delhi, surplus to municipal needs. And that the lands be conveyed to the adjacent owners, Christopher and Heather DeBias, at a valuation of $13,465.25 plus HST. And that responsibility for all costs associated with the conveyance to be borne by the property owners receiving the lands, and that the net proceeds from the sale of the property be recorded as revenue in the current year's operating budget, with the net proceeds to be transferred to the property management services reserve, and further that the mayor and clerk be directed to sign all documentation to complete the transaction.
Thank you. Mover. Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Columbus. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Second report will also be voted on in open session. The staff recommendation is as follows. That staff report CS 2115, proposed property sale, be received as information, and that council declares the lands as illustrated in Schedule A being a portion of the property described as PTLT 17 Block 1 PL 189 Delhi, surplus to municipal needs, and that the lands be conveyed to the adjacent owners, Todd Nechtel and Patricia O'Reilly, at a valuation of $22,680 plus HST, and that responsibility for all costs associated with conveyance be borne by the property owners receiving the lands, and that net proceeds of from the sale of the property be recorded as revenue in current year's operating budget, with net proceeds to be transferred to the property management services reserve, and further that the mayor and clerk be directed to sign all documentation to complete the transaction.
Thank you. Can I have a mover? Councillor Rabbit, seconded by Councillor Huffman. All those in favor? And that is carried.
The third report regarding staff report CAO 2123 there was a motion done in closed session. The report was received as information, and the Director of Human Resources was authorized to negotiate a collective agreement with FCW Local 175 within the mandate outlined in the report, and reconfirm the approval of the mandates for Ontario Public Service Employee Union and Service Employees International Union. The fourth report is going to be voted on in open session. It's the staff recommendation is as follows. That staff report CAO 21-24 regarding call for submissions be received as information, and that staff are directed to finalize agreements with New Stadia Recreation Inc., and that staff are directed to invite Ames Distilling to make a presentation for further public input on their proposal. I'm getting feedback, sorry. And that the clerk and the mayor are delegated to the authority to sign the appropriate agreement. And further, that staff are authorized to negotiate a transition agreement with Waterford Minor Hockey. And further, that staff are authorized to enter into discuss with the Port Dover Lions Club and the Lions Club of Waterford. Sorry, enter into discussions with the Port Dover Lions Club and the Lions Club of Waterford. I missed a word there.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And if I can have a mover, Councillor Huffman, second. Councillor Taylor, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you.
final closed session staff report will be voted in open session, and a public report will be provided next week at council. So the staff recommendation is as follows. That report CAO 21-25, Human Resource Management Strategy, Financial Management and Planning Report be received as information, and that the long-term human resource strategy proposed for the Financial Management and Planning Department be approved, and that council approved a budget amendment to include the hiring of 2 additional full-time permanent positions, and that council approve a budget amendment to revise the approved staffing levels contained with the new budget initiative, FSD 410-2021-005, financial information and system improvements from 2 temporary full-time positions to 2 permanent full-time positions, and further that council approves the proposed out-of-schedule rates for the financial analysts and senior accountant positions.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And a mover, please. Councillor Rabbit, second by Councillor Taylor. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And Mr. Clerk, may we move to adjournment?
Through you, Chair Michele, that's correct.
Yes, could I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Martin. All those in favor?
Need a seconder?
I'm sorry, my apologies. Councillor Rabbits is seconding. All those in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you very much, members of committee.
Mr. Chair, thank you for conducting a good meeting, as did the clerk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, I do have to say that our clerk did an outstanding job today, helping me prepare and dealing with some of the technological difficulties that we experienced earlier. So thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you for the kind words.
It's only 6:13 and we're done CIC.
Yes, we're going to try to do this more often. Thank you, Councillor.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Take care, everyone.
Yes,
All
goodbye,
right, good night,
everyone.
guys.
All the best.
Good night.
Bye now.